Get down. Hands where I can see them. The shout cracked through the crisp morning air like a whip. Before Jaylen could even respond, a force slammed into his back, driving him into the pavement. I didn't do anything. He cried out, his voice muffled against the concrete, but the officer wasn't listening. Knees in Jaylen's back, hands yanking his arms behind him, the man marked into his radio. Suspicious minor, possible runaway, resisting. Around them, car doors. Froze mid-close. Students dropped their backpacks. A teacher half opened the main entrance, staring wide-eyed. Cell phones shot up like reflexes. A few recorded silently. Others trembled in their grips. Jaylen's chest heaved. I was just waiting for tryouts, he managed, the words breaking between gasps. You fit the description, the officer snapped. You always got an excuse, don't you? Jaylen blinked up through watery eyes, dust clinging to his cheek. His school's gym bag had burst open and the scuffled basketball shoes rolled onto the sidewalk. His permission slip fluttered beneath the wind of a passing car. One boy in a hoodie whispered, That's Jaylen. He's in my class, but the cop didn't care. He twisted the cuffs tighter, and Jaylen winced in pain. It was morning. A school. Morning. And 12-year-old Jaylen, who'd only come early to chase a dream, now lay pinned beneath a grown man with a badge, his words drowned by the pounding of heartbeats, sirens, and disbelief. Stand up. The officer barked, yanking Jaylen to his feet. Jaylen staggered, blinking. His glasses dangled from one ear, cracked. I didn't do anything, he murmured again, his voice shaking. Don't lie to me, boy. The officer shouted, eyes wild. What gang are you with? I'm not in a gang. I swear. I'm here. For basketball tryouts. That's it. The cop's lip curled. Yeah? Then why are you hiding out like a criminal? Jaylen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. With one swift stomp, the officer's boot crushed the fallen glasses. Crunch. The lenses shattered. Under his soul like something disposable. Jaylen froze. Those glasses weren't just frames in plastic, they were the thing he'd mowed lawns all summer to afford. The only way he could clearly see the court, the classroom. The world. Now they were shards at his feet. Tears spilled down his face, hot and helpless. I can't see, he whispered. Please. But the officer had already grabbed his shoulder. Again, spinning him toward the squad car. Every word Jaylen spoke was met with silence or force. Every explanation ignored. Every plea swallowed by the grind of power pressed against youth. And silence suffocating truth. Hey, that's a child. Someone finally yelled. A woman clutching her purse took a cautious step forward. You're hurting him. Ma'am, step back, the officer snapped without looking. Students watched from behind the school fence, frozen. Some lowered their phones. A few kept recording. One kid whispered, Why ain't he stopping? Another laughed. Nervously. Bro, this is crazy. But not all were silent. A father in a car nearby rolled down his window. You really cuffing a kid for sitting outside his school? The officer's grip tightened on Jaylen's arm. This is police business. Move along. Some obeyed. Others hesitated, torn between fear and justice. No one got closer. Jaylen glanced around, searching the faces for help. Most looked away. Some stared through him like he was an object, a spectacle. A few cared. But nobody moved. That silence screamed louder than sirens ever could. His lips trembled. His voice, barely a whisper, cracked with the weight of everything he was trying to hold in. I just wanted to go to tryouts. The words fell like a stone in water small, quiet but impossible to ignore. The crowd shifted. Even the students who didn't know him paused. That one sentence cut through the chaos and confusion, landing with painful clarity. Tryouts. He wasn't skipping school. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't a threat. He was a boy with a dream. His beat-up basketball shoes peeked out from his open bag, scuffed but laced tight. His jersey, wrinkled but clean, peeked from his backpack's zipper. And now, his dream sat cracked on the pavement, framed in the broken pieces of his glasses, and the weight of disbelief around him. Still cuffed, still gasping, Jaylen looked at the officer through tear-blurred eyes and said again, softer now, "Please, I was just going to tryouts." And just like that, the moment locked into time. Jaylen's tear-streaked face, the crushed glasses beneath the boot, the officer's clenched jaw, the crowd split between outrage and silence. A siren wailed faintly in the distance closer now, but somehow irrelevant. The camera in someone's hand stopped shaking. The internet didn't know it yet, but this clip would spread. This still image of a black boy, not resisting, just existing, would burn its way across timelines and headlines. But in that exact second, Jaylen didn't know that. He just knew the concrete was cold, his glasses were gone, and his dream felt further than ever. "I'm going to make the team this time," Jaylen whispered under his breath, adjusting the crumpled piece of paper with the tryout date circled twice in red. His bedroom was small, walls faded, carpet worn, but to him, it was sacred ground. Magic Johnson beamed down from one wall. Kobe Bryant froze mid-jump on the other. Jaylen studied their faces like maps to somewhere better. He dribbled an invisible ball across the floor, pivoted, shot, three-pointer, he smiled, imagining. The crowd erupting, no cheers, just the hum of the old fan in the window. But Jaylen didn't need applause. He had belief. Enough to drown out the noise of the world telling him otherwise. Tomorrow wasn't just a tryout. It was proof. Proof that he was more than what teachers ignored, more than what security guards trailed, more than what strangers assumed. He looked at his reflection, pushed up his glasses, and nodded. "I got this." Down the hall, Grandma stirred the oatmeal. Again, even though it didn't need more stirring. She moved slower now, hips aching, fingers stiff, but never complained. "Jaylen, don't forget your slip for the coach," she called. He entered the kitchen, hugged her tight. She smelled like Vicks and cinnamon. "Got it right here," he said, holding up the folded paper like it was gold. She smiled, but her eyes lingered on his face, tired but proud. "You know they ain't gonna hand you nothing, baby," she said, gently. "You gotta take it, with your heart full and your head high." He nodded. He knew at school. Jaylen raised his hand again. The question sat on his tongue, waiting. The teacher looked right through him and picked someone else. It wasn't. New at the corner store. He felt the manager's eyes trail his every step. Another aisle. Another look. As if his hoodie was a warning sign. At the park, white moms gently pulled their toddlers away, smiling awkwardly like he wouldn't notice. Jaylen noticed, even at lunch, when he offered half his sandwich to a kid who forgot theirs. The cafeteria monitor narrowed her eyes like he was running a scam. Jaylen wasn't loud. He didn't fight. He didn't steal. But still, he felt like a walking threat to people who didn't know a thing about him. Being smart wasn't enough. Being kind wasn't either. He started wondering if they ever saw a boy at all, or just someone to fear. His sneakers weren't new. They had a hole near the toe, patched with black tape. But they still had bounce. He bought them from a guy down the street for $10. Money he earned cleaning gutters and pulling weeds all summer. The glasses were worse thin plastic, barely holding together. They slipped every time he sweated, which meant all the time. But Jaylen held on to them like treasure. When you grow up with less, you learn how to stretch every dollar, how to smile while pretending something doesn't hurt, how to chase a dream on cracked soles. He'd skipped snacks at lunch for weeks to save up, because tryouts weren't just a goal. They were his shot, his only shot. Jaylen zipped up his bag, double-checked his slip, and tied the sneakers one more time. His grandma peeked out the window like she always did. "Text me when you get there, okay? You know how they look at you." Jaylen didn't ask who they were. He didn't have to dot in their neighborhood. The police cruised slow, like sharks. Boys who looked like Jaylen didn't get the benefit of the doubt. They got warnings, cuffs, suspicion. "They don't see kids," Grandma said once. "They see criminals." And today, he'd walk into that bias wearing beat-up shoes and fragile hope. "Hey, what are you doing sitting here?" Officer Donnelly's voice cut through the quiet morning air as he approached Jaylen with a hard stare. Jaylen straightened his pay jersey, holding tight to the permission slip folded in his pocket. "I'm just waiting for my ride. I'm early for basketball tryouts." Donnelly's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure about that? Doesn't look like you're on the schedule. You skipping class?" "No, sir." "I have permission," Jaylen said softly. Trying to keep his voice steady, the officer took a step closer, lowering his tone. "Look, kid, you don't belong hanging around here. We've had too many problems lately." Jaylen's heart thudded loud, but he forced himself to nod. "I'm not causing trouble." Donnelly's gaze flicked over Jaylen like he was some threat. "Let me see some ID." The tone wasn't a request, it was a command. Jaylen fumbled in his pocket and pulled out his student ID. "Here." Donnelly barely glanced at it before tossing it aside. "Where are you really from? What gang are you with?" Jaylen's throat tightened. "I'm not in a gang. I live down the street. I'm just trying to make the basketball team." The officer scoffed. "Yeah, that's what they all say. You expect me to believe you?" "I don't want any trouble," Jaylen whispered. "Trouble finds you, whether you want it or not," Donnelly muttered, pulling out his radio. "This one's looking suspicious." "Suspicious minor, over." Jaylen stood frozen, each word like a weight pressing down. The questions weren't just about rules. They carried assumptions about him, about his skin, about what he might or might not be. As Donnelly focused on Jaylen, a group of white students sauntered past, laughing and vaping openly. No one stopped them. One boy flicked smoke into the breeze, blowing it right in the officer's direction. Donnelly barely blinked, but Jaylen was different. Every move he made was scrutinized. The radio crackled again. "Suspect is still here." No ID matching records. Jaylen clutched his permission slip tighter. He watched his classmates walk by, free and unbothered, as if their skin gave them invisible armor. The unfairness hit him, like a slap. Fear settled deep inside Jaylen's chest, a cold pit that made it hard to breathe. He wanted to run, to scream, to disappear, but he stayed rooted, mouth dry, hands by his sides. "Please, sir, I'm not doing anything wrong," he said quietly, trying to sound calm. Donnelly leaned in, voice low and threatening. "You think you can talk your way out of this?" Jaylen swallowed hard, forcing himself not to flinch. He learned early. Fear had to be swallowed, questions answered without anger. Because when you look like him, staying quiet is sometimes the only way to survive. Around them, students glanced. Briefly, phones in hand, but nobody stepped forward. Some recorded. Some whispered. Some just kept walking. Jaylen felt more alone than ever. The silence screamed louder than Donnelly's accusations. No teacher intervened. No one called out the injustice. Just a boy, standing accused, stripped of dignity in front of a crowd that watched but did nothing. His heart pounded, knowing this was just the beginning, that the world saw him not as a kid with dreams, but as a problem waiting to happen. "You don't belong here." Officer Donnelly barked, his voice loud enough to catch the attention of the gathering students. "You're trespassing, probably a runaway." Jaylen's eyes widened as whispers rippled through the crowd. The once familiar schoolyard now felt like a courtroom where he was the accused. "I'm not a runaway," Jaylen said, his voice shaking but steady. I'm here for basketball tryouts. Donnelly sneered. Tryouts? You're not on the list. This place isn't for kids like you. Jaylen's heart sank. The stares from classmates felt sharp, piercing through him like daggers. Step aside. Donnelly commanded the growing crowd. This kid's a problem. The air thickened with tension. The officer's words weren't just an accusation. They were a public declaration that Jaylen was an outsider, unworthy and dangerous. And with every passing second, the line between suspicion and shame blurred. Jaylen instinctively took a cautious step backward, his body tense and trembling. His mind screamed to run, to get away from the looming threat, but his feet hesitated. Don't move. Donnelly snarled, misreading fear for defiance. Before Jaylen could react, the officer lunged, tackling him hard onto the pavement. The sudden impact stole the air from his lungs. Stop resisting. Donnelly shouted as Jaylen struggled beneath the weight. Panic flooded Jaylen's mind. His heart pounded like a drum, every instinct screaming to escape, but his small frame was no match. Tried to explain, "Please, I'm not fighting you." But the officer's grip only tightened, and the crowd watched in stunned silence. Fear, confusion, and pain collided in a storm that felt impossible to control. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was a brutal reminder of how quickly the worst could happen when you're seen as a threat instead of a kid. In the chaos, Jaylen's glasses slipped off, tumbling across the rough pavement. A sharp crack echoed as Donnelly's boot came down hard, crushing the fragile lenses beneath it. Jaylen's breath hitched, pain burning not just from the fall, but from the destruction of something precious. His lips split open on the concrete, blood mingling with tears streaming down his face. "You're hurting me," Jaylen cried out, voice cracking with anguish, but Donnelly barely flinched. "You don't get to talk back," he growled. Those broken glasses were more than just plastic and glass. They were a symbol of Jaylen's dreams. His hope to be seen clearly in a world that often blurs and dismisses him. As the shattered pieces scattered, so did the fragile thread holding Jaylen's confidence together. Around them, phones whipped out like a sudden storm, capturing every moment in sharp focus. Some students giggled nervously. Others stared wide-eyed, unsure if they were witnessing justice or cruelty. The buzzing of notifications filled the air, but not a single voice demanded Donnelly stop. Some held back tears. Others whispered apologies to themselves for not acting. The silence of the crowd was deafening. Jaylen's cries echoed unanswered, swallowed by the indifferent hum of recording devices. In this digital age, moments like this spread fast-shared across platforms, dissected by millions. But here, in real time, no one stepped forward. No one broke the silence to say, "This isn't right." The cameras rolled, but the voices stayed quiet. Suddenly, a black female teacher rushed forward, her eyes fierce with concern. "Let him go," she demanded softly, reaching out to Jaylen. Donnelly turned sharply, pointing a stern finger. "Step back, ma'am. This doesn't concern you." Her face tightened, caught between fear and the urge to defend. "I'm his teacher," she insisted, voice wavering slightly. But the officer's authority was absolute. She took a hesitant step back, swallowing her frustration, torn between the safety of her job and the child she wanted to protect. Jaylen glanced at her, gratitude mixed with heartbreak. The system was designed to isolate him. Even those who wanted to help were forced to choose silence. Cold metal clicked around Jaylen's wrists before he could protest. "Get in the car," Donnelly ordered, shoving him roughly toward the squad vehicle. Jaylen's gaze drifted toward the gym's entrance, where the muffled sounds of basketballs bouncing and sneakers squeaking marked the start of tryouts without him. His breath caught, tears blurring the scene. He clutched the remnants of his broken glasses in one hand, the other pressing against the rough cuffs. His dream, just out of reach. And in that moment, Jaylen wasn't just a boy in handcuffs. He was a symbol of a system that steals futures before they even begin. "This video is disturbing," a local news anchor said, her voice tight with shock as clips of Jaylen's brutal arrest played across screens nationwide. Within hours, the footage exploded online, shared, retweeted, and dissected by millions. The hashtag Justice for Jaylen surged like wildfire, lighting up social media platforms with outrage and calls for accountability. People from every corner of the city, from classrooms to coffee shops, watched in disbelief. Parents whispered anxiously to their children. Activists organized rallies, and ordinary citizens demanded change. "This isn't just another viral clip," said a community leader on live TV. "It's a mirror reflecting deep-rooted injustice." The world tuned in. Jaylen's story shifted from a personal tragedy to a collective battle against systemic racism. The silence that once protected the oppressor shattered under the weight of a unified voice. Conversations ignited, spanning forums and dinner tables alike, reminding everyone that these moments weren't isolated. They were symptoms of a larger crisis, demanding urgent attention. And in that surge of digital fury, a new kind of power emerged, one that could no longer be ignored. By morning, the pressure on the school and police was undeniable. Civil rights lawyers contacted Jaylen's grandmother, offering support and promising to fight for justice. "We've seen too many stories like this," one attorney said. "It's time to hold those responsible accountable." News vans lined the school's entrance, reporters firing questions at officials who struggled to provide answers. "What led to the officers' actions?" a journalist pressed. "Why was Jaylen treated this way?" School administrators gave rehearsed statements, but the community wasn't satisfied. Parents gathered, demanding transparency and protection for their children. The school board convened emergency meetings, feeling the weight of a growing backlash. Behind closed doors, whispers of investigations and suspensions swirled, but outside, the crowd's demands only grew louder. Jayle, in single quotes, S experience was no longer his alone. It had become a catalyst forcing institutions to confront uncomfortable truths. Late that evening, Jaylen's grandmother's phone rang unexpectedly. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" she whispered. A calm, deep voice responded. "This is Magic Johnson. I saw what happened to your grandson. I want to meet him." Her breath caught in disbelief. "Magic Johnson? The basketball legend?" "Yes," he replied warmly. "I want to help." No child should face what Jaylen went through. Tears welled up as the weight of the moment settled in. In that simple call lay hope, a powerful reminder that even amidst pain, all eyes could emerge from the most unexpected places. For Jaylen and his family, this was more than support. It was validation that their fight mattered, that they were not alone. The call set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The next afternoon, Magic Johnson arrived at their modest home, a calm presence in the midst of turmoil. He sat beside Jaylen, his eyes kind and understanding. "I brought something for you," Magic said, handing over a brand new pair of prescription sports glasses. Jaylen's fingers trembled as he took them, the weight of the gesture sinking in. "You've got a game." Magic smiled. "Let's get you back on the court." For the first time since the arrest, Jaylen felt a spark, an ember of hope glowing beneath the pain. Magic spoke about resilience, about fighting back, not just with words, but with heart. "We'll make sure your voice is heard," he promised. "Together, we'll turn this moment into a movement." Jaylen nodded slowly, the brokenness inside him slowly mending with every word. In that quiet room, amid worn furniture and faded photos, a new chapter began, one of healing, strength, and determination. Magic Johnson's public support amplified Jaylen's story beyond the local streets. At rallies, in interviews, and across social media, the message was clear. Injustice would no longer be ignored. School board meetings overflowed, with concerned parents and activists demanding accountability. Officer Donnelly found himself under intense national scrutiny. His actions dissected and condemned. News outlets chronicled the unfolding drama, placing the spotlight on institutional racism and the urgent need for reform. Jaylen's name became a rallying cry, one boy's struggle inspiring a city to confront uncomfortable truths. The tides of power began to shift as community voices joined forces with influential allies. And while the fight was far from over, the momentum was undeniable. "We're here to demand justice for Jaylen," the crowd chanted, their voices rising like thunder through the city streets. What started as a viral hashtag had exploded into a powerful movement. People from all walks of life, students, parents, activists, filled the sidewalks, holding signs and lighting candles in honor of the boy whose story had touched a nerve across the nation. "This isn't just about Jaylen anymore," one organizer told a reporter. "It's about breaking the cycle of racial injustice that too many have endured in silence." Vigils popped up overnight. Community centers buzzed with planning sessions, and social media feeds flooded with updates on upcoming rallies. The energy was electric, fueled by a collective refusal to let another voice be silenced. As chants echoed beneath City Hall, the message was clear. Systemic racism would no longer be swept under the rug. Each marcher carried the weight of history, but also the hope for change. The streets had become a battleground, not of violence, but of unity and resolve. Jaylen's name was on everyone's lips, a symbol transforming pain into purpose. Inside a quiet conference room, a thick folder lay open, a grim testament to years of ignored complaints. Officer Donnelly's record was a litany of accusations, excessive force, racial profiling, and misconduct stretching back nearly a decade. School board members had brushed aside warnings, choosing silence over action. When the documents finally surfaced, the community's outrage deepened. How many more Jaylens were silenced before this? A parent demanded during a packed meeting. Legal experts described the negligence as systemic failure, a betrayal of trust that allowed one man's abuse to fester unchecked. The revelations tore through the school's facade of safety, exposing cracks long hidden. For Jaylen's family, the news was bittersweet validation at last, but a painful reminder of how deeply rooted the problem was. Yet this exposure ignited new fire among advocates. "We must ensure this never happens again," declared a civil rights attorney. The system's complicity was no longer a secret. Accountability was no longer optional. The day came when Officer Donnelly walked out of the precinct for the last time. Termination papers in hand, his face betrayed a flicker of disbelief. For years, he had operated with impunity, shielded by a culture that ignored complaints and protected power. Now, his actions were finally catching up. Civil charges loomed, and the community's demand for justice echoed louder than ever. This is a message to anyone who thinks they can abuse authority without consequence. A city official declared. The fall of Donnelly marked a turning point, a moment where the system's walls began to crumble. For Jaylen, hearing the news was both a relief and a challenge. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about rebuilding trust in a world that had failed him. But with every step forward, the scars remained, a reminder of the cost of silence. In an unprecedented move, the school district issued a formal apology. "We acknowledge the harm caused and the failure to protect our students," the superintendent stated, voice steady but sincere. Alongside the apology came promises: mandatory racial bias training for staff, revamped disciplinary policies, and a commitment to transparency. Announcement was met with cautious optimism. Some called it overdue. Others questioned how much would truly change. Jaylen's grandmother watched the speech, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "This is a start," she whispered. "But words have to be backed by action." The apology signaled a shift, a recognition that institutions must confront uncomfortable truths if they want to heal. For the community, it was a step toward accountability, a tentative promise that Jaylen's ordeal could lead to lasting reform. When Jaylen sat for his first national interview, the boy on screen was no longer just a victim. With quiet confidence, he shared his story, not to elicit pity, but to inspire change. "I want people to understand what it feels like to be judged before you're even seen," he said, voice steady despite the weight of his experience. Reporters asked about fear, pain, and hope, and Jaylen answered with honesty that resonated far beyond the studio. His resilience became a beacon for others facing injustice. Viewers across the country saw more than a bruised child. They saw strength forged in adversity. "This is just the beginning," Jaylen declared. "I'm not going to let this define me." The interview transformed him from a silent sufferer to a powerful advocate, his voice cutting through noise. To demand equality. The gym buzzed with anticipation, but this time, Jaylen felt different. Magic Johnson sat courtside, his encouraging smile a steady anchor in the sea of nerves. When Jaylen stepped onto the court, every eye was on him, not as a suspect or statistic, but as a player with undeniable talent. His movements were sharp, his focus unwavering. The tryout wasn't just about basketball, it was a statement. Each dribble, each shot was a reclaiming of dignity stolen from him months ago. Coaches nodded in approval. Teammates welcomed him with open arms. When the final whistle blew, Jaylen's place on the team was confirmed. Tears filled his eyes as he glanced toward Magic, grateful for the second chance to chase his dream. Clutching his new glasses, Jaylen turned to Magic Johnson. "You helped me see again," he said softly, voice thick with emotion. "Not just with my eyes, but with my heart." Magic smiled, his hand resting gently on Jaylen's shoulder. "This is just the start," he replied. "Keep your vision clear and your spirit strong." In that moment, Jaylen understood hope wasn't about forgetting the past, but learning to see a future brighter than ever before. What would you have done if you saw Jaylen being treated like that? Would you have stayed silent or stepped up to speak out? These questions aren't easy, but they're crucial. When faced with injustice, it's our choices that define us. Jaylen's story challenges us all to look inward. How would you react when someone's dignity is stripped away simply because of the color of their skin? Your voice matters. Have you ever faced racism or injustice? Maybe you've stayed quiet out of fear or uncertainty. Sharing your truth can break the silence that allows discrimination to thrive. What did you learn from those moments? Your experiences help build a community rooted in understanding and solidarity. If Jaylen's journey moved you, show your support. Like this video, not just to hit a button, but to stand for justice. Share it so his story reaches those who need to hear it, amplifying the call for change until silence becomes impossible. And if you believe in stories that expose truth and inspire action, subscribe now. Join a community committed to justice and human dignity. More stories like Jaylen's are coming, real, powerful, and deeply human. Together, we can keep the conversation alive and push for a world where fairness isn't optional. Your engagement isn't just a click, it's a step toward change.